Namaste, everyone, and welcome to the grand launch of the VM podcast. My name is Neeti, and I will be in conversation with Sumit Sharma, the man behind the mic, who's going to enlighten us on what this podcast really is, what is it about, who is it for, and why should we listen to it. But before we dive deeper into the podcast, let me introduce everyone to the platform of Vichar Manthan. Vichar Manthan, VM for short, has been working hard for the past 10 years to earnestly churn out ideas that impact our modern British society. We have chapters located in London, Leicester, Manchester, Oxford, who also lead weekly book clubs. So if you're interested, please check out our website on our social media handles. I'm sure you'll find the links listed in the description box below. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome Sumit to the floor to tell us a bit more about VM's podcast project. So Sumit, what is this podcast about?
Mr. Nidhi, thank you for that introduction. The Vichar Manthan podcast is a new project by Vichar Manthan. I have the great fortune of hosting it. And so I get to speak to individuals in the field, people in our network about dharmic ideas, dharmic concepts, and really just trying to engage more of the audience in audio manner. You know, podcasts are quite popular, they're featured at the moment, and I'm having great fun in recording and setting up.
All right, brilliant. Who would you say our target audience is, Sumit? Who is this podcast really aimed at?
I know you might disagree. I don't think I'm that old. So a young generation, you know, somebody coming out of university, a young adult, maybe first few years in their career, or even someone that's spent a good while, you know, sort of as a young professional. So something like 18 to 35, you know, or anyone that really wants to listen in to a earnest conversation, an exploration of ideas, someone that would like to maybe be a fly on the wall, right, and listen in to the churning of some ideas, or indeed someone that wants to get involved as well. Yeah, I think so.
And that's what we do at VM, right? Churning different thoughts and different ideas. So what kind of topics would you like to churn out with every different podcast episode that you bring out?
Yeah, I don't think there's any topic that we shouldn't be able to touch. Things that are relevant, right? So the first episode was about exploring Dharma. So let's define our terms. Let's understand what Dharma really is. Things like eat, meet, breathe. Episode 2 is on wealth. You know, wealth is important to everyone in society to function. You need to understand wealth, how to use it, how to create it. And then the next couple of episodes, we've got womanhood. We're talking about sustainable contributions. We're talking about the application of Dharma. I mean, let us know what topics you'd like to hear. I encourage our listeners, the audience members, to email in and tell us what you would like us to talk about. I guess I can ask you, Nidhi, what topic would you like us to cover?
Well, I think it'd be really, let me think about this. I think it'd be really interesting to put love and sex under the dharmic lens, just see how, because I feel the topic has its share of taboo attached to it.
Sure.
So I'd be really interested to see and listen to, you know, the churning of it. So I think that's something that myself or people around the age limit that you've kind of suggested, 18 to
sure. It's not a limit,
30s.
You know.
Not a limit. Sorry, I meant like the age reference that you gave us. Sure. I think we'd be interested.
So that's a great topic, right? And we're all mature adults. It's an earnest exploration. So let's churn thoughts. I'll have to find someone to come and talk to us about such topics. Funnily enough, and he'll hate us for mentioning this, but I've got Sachinji back for application of Dharma, and we're talking about relationships.
You've got Sachin coming in to talk about relationships.
I learned a lot during the research, and it's a great episode. It'll be coming out soon. So, we look at what relationships are and how one can apply Dharma to relationships, and I go through a set of sort of stereotypical functions of what a relationship does, and we sort of dissect that further. And I think that's the idea around the podcast, right? Is to, if you think about a typical Vichar Manthan or a fireside, it can sometimes be quite complex and be fairly nuanced because of the sort of range of speakers that we have and the topics we're trying to explore. And so what I think I'm trying to do with the podcast is just sort of tone that down a bit. Let's sort of understand the terms. Let's get into conversation with someone that understands, to be just that little bit more engaging, I think. An easy listen, I hope.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think at this point, I'd like to invite our listeners who are sitting at home listening to us to share topics that you are interested in. What would you like us to explore? And just place it in the comment section, and we'd love to pick it up for the future podcasts. All right, Sumit. So we're talking about these different topics that you're going to introduce on the podcast. Where can we find these episodes? How can we listen to it?
Sure. So pick your favorite podcast platform. That might be Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud. There's lots out there. So pick your favorite one and just search for Vichar Manthan or search for the VM podcast. And actually what I'll do now, I'll bring up on screen the Vichar Manthan website. So it's vicharmanthan.org. And across here, you'll see podcast. And obviously once you click on that, you get to see, you've got direct links straight over to the platforms and a bit of a summary, and you can listen directly in the page. So you can see there are 2 episodes out already. And then of course you can figure out other parts of the VM space as well. So really just search it in, put it into YouTube, have a look at all our social media handles, and get involved. And I think, as you're saying, we want people to tell us. So as well as putting it in the description into the chat box below, whenever you listen to a podcast, if you agree with a topic, if you disagree with a topic, I want to know. I want you to email in. And so the email address for that is podcast@vicharmanthan.org. I don't claim to be the holder of truth, the bearer of truth. We will agree and disagree on many topics. And so it's about churning those thoughts and ideas. Do we get to some type of consensus? Do we get to some understanding around different viewpoints about a topic? And that's how we learn, right? We learn from each other.
I think you just answered my next question, Sumit. If I'm a listener and I have a question, where could I submit it? So thank you so much for sharing that email address with our listeners. I'm sure we also have an Instagram account for the VM podcast. So guys at home, feel free to DM Sumit. I'm sure he'll answer your DMs. All right, Sumit. So I don't know what actually happens in the process of making a podcast. So how about you tell me, and hopefully everyone else at home who might have the same question, you can answer that. So what actually goes into the making of a podcast?
Yeah, great question. And one I've had to learn quite quickly during sort of the onboarding of this project. And so to anyone out there doing content creation, podcast creation, I salute you. It's a task. But I'm here to learn. So podcast is a lot about the audio. So you want to get good mics, headphones, speakers, recording systems, all that kind of stuff. It doesn't have to be too expensive, but you want to focus on audio. And then there's editing. I find myself deep in YouTube videos of how to learn how to edit audio now. Never did I think I would do any sound engineering, but you come across opportunities in life where you're challenged and tested in various different ways. So, and then marketing and trying to get people to listen to it, and of course research. I need to woo people to get them onto the podcast. I thought there might be a line of people queuing up to join, but it's a new space, right? We're looking to explore. I'm forever learning. So yeah, lots of little bits. And I think if anyone can share any better experiences with me, please let me know. I'm forever trying to improve.
It seems like you're doing a lot of hard work behind the scenes, Sumit. So
not just me. There's a whole team. It's Vichar Manthan, of course.
Of course, everyone's doing a lot of hard work behind the scenes, and that just leads me on to my next question. As listeners, I'm sure everyone would really appreciate all this hard work. So if they would like to get involved, how could they possibly go about doing that?
Yeah, sure. It's a brand new project, so I don't know what's out there. I don't know the steps to progress. We're figuring it out. We've got strategy, of course. So if there's someone out there that wants to jump on board, help out the team, or really just get themselves involved with Vichar Manthan, then I would say maybe first start, hit the website, watch a couple of VMs, maybe review those in your own time. Let's see the understanding you've got out of the topic. Join a book club. I've recently joined Oxford Book Club because of a new book they were reading, which was Jiddu Krishnamurti's Beginnings of Learning. So, the ethos behind Vichar Manthan is that ideas matter. And it's about investing in those ideas to understand them further. And so the podcast is a branch from that tree. And so if you want to jump on as a guest, if you want to help with the team, let's get involved. Let's be practical together. Let's take those next steps. I don't know what the future looks like, but let's build it together. Let's discuss.
Let's build it together. That's a really nice way to put it. Thank you, Sumit. And I think that's a really nice thought to kind of go into knowing a little bit more about you as a person, the man behind the mic on these podcast episodes. So tell me about Sumit Sharma. Who is he? What is he like?
Sure. I think for many years, I've deliberated over this question. You know, man goes through challenge to figure out the meaning of life, let's say. And I've summed it up now. I've come to an understanding that I've got several sort of buckets or several spaces within my life that I am interested in, that I have passions in. So one of those is technology. I am forever amazed, fascinated, passionate about how humanity has evolved with technology. And so my day job is a cloud solutions architect for a large IT firm. And I speak to clients all the time about their business problems, and I figure out how to solve their challenges with the technology. So that's my day job, and that occupies lots of my life. But even outside of work, I'm still researching about the technological world, cloud computing, 5G, all these different types of things. Brilliant, amazing. And then there's another side of me, which is, I say another side, like there are many overlaps, but which is all about communication. So I do a lot of public speaking, I coach, I've chaired Vichar Manthan panels, there's Varney Speakers Academy. I spent some time with Toastmasters. Again, I am in awe and studious around the art of communication. There are so many different levers that one can pull and change, volume, tempo, pitch, all sorts that change what that communication ends up being. And so I think it's really important to be an effective communicator, a confident communicator, and especially when you know your subject matter, to be able to communicate that in another way. So technology and communication, and then I've got like a bonus one, wellness, which is sort of all things yoga, mental health, meditation, and all those kind of things.
Yeah, didn't you start a guided meditation last lockdown, the first lockdown we had last March?
Yeah, there was, so as well as doing public speaking workshops online, at the start of lockdown, I felt compelled to share, to do something for community. So as well as going and helping out with Seva Day, there was lots that happened with that. I also then did guided meditations online. I was very fortunate as a child. I was taught lots of different types of meditation, and I went online. There was a lot of feedback. People were able to de-stress and chill out. So yeah, I'm just giving back to society, right? And I think that's quite important. It's quite a principle I hold about contribution. We should want our own flourishing as an individual, but also benefit society as a whole. What are you doing for your local, whatever it is, community, society, colleagues, friends, I don't know. And so that's part of my sort of commitment.
Well, it seems like you really enjoy learning, the constant cycle of learning and giving back to society. So thank you so much for, starting this podcast with your team and enlightening us on different topics. Which brings me back to the topic of podcast. Sumit, what's your favorite podcast?
My favorite podcast. I was never really a sort of podcast person, but when the challenge of the VM podcast came, I call it a challenge. It wasn't a challenge. It was an opportunity. And let me tell you a quick story about how I am now leading the podcast project. Last year, July 2020, Vichar Manthan had the first Sustainable Narratives Conference,
of course,
which was a big deal. It was great. It was an amazing experience, not just to be a part of, but the way ideas have come to fruition at the end of it. Amazing.
Very successful too.
Brilliant.
It was extremely successful.
Discussing the 5 cornerstones of society, and I won't go to all the details, but if you haven't seen any of that conference, I encourage you to go back and look at that. Great firesides, everything. And so during the process of that conference, we had a lot of meetings internally about ideas and what we can do with VM and how to make it more engaging, interesting, etc. And Sachinji, Dr. Sachin Nanda, international coordinator of Vichar Manthan, was saying to me, oh, it'd be a great idea if we sort of did a podcast. And we kind of discussed it, it was one of those things. And then a few weeks later, and I should have seen it coming, got a call from Sachinji, regular sort of chit chat, how are you doing? It's like, oh, Sumit, got a new project for you. And of course, whatever it was, I was going to say yes. He's a mentor to many people. We're very fortunate to have leading lights in our society like this. And so whatever opportunity he will throw my way is going to be for the betterment of me and everyone else. So sure, essentially, what is it? Let's do it. And lo and behold, here we are on the launch of the podcast, and there are several podcasts online already. So I backtrack. What does it mean to me? No, I forgot the question.
You've forgotten my question. Thank you so much. I was asking what your favorite podcast is or was before you jumped into this project yourself.
Sorry.
Or should I say Sachin coerced you into it? Was there coffee involved? Was there coffee involved?
Yeah.
Because it always starts with coffee with Sachin.
Some type of hot chocolate, I'm sure. My favorite podcast. So as a result of being thoroughly invested into this project, I've decided I need to be a podcast person. So got all the apps, downloaded everything. Every walk I go on, I make sure I'm listening to a podcast. And so I think the most successful podcaster is a guy called Joe Rogan, who runs a podcast called JRE, Joe Rogan Experience in America. And he's brilliant. He's interviewed hundreds, if not thousands of people, really gets interested in a topic. There's a level of intelligence there. So I listen to a lot of Joe Rogan. And so that's from a sort of logistical aspect, like how to run a podcast. If we talk about the topic of a podcast, there's a guy called Kushal Mehra who runs the Jarvik podcast.
Oh, yes. He was also on Sustainable Narratives, wasn't he?
Yes, he was in a Fireside Conversation.
It was a Fireside, yeah.
And he's great to listen to. The way he can dissect a topic, the way he shows his nuanced understanding of something is great. So I like to listen to Kushal Mehra. And then someone quite similar to him is Shyam Sharma from India. And again, Shyam's brilliant, the way he takes an idea, and really explains it. So JRE, Kushal Mehra, and Shyam Sharma are who I'm listening to at the moment. And so if there's anything out there that people think are great, I would love to hear. Let's share.
Definitely. Thank you, Sumit. Also, I've had a cheeky sneak peek of some of your most recent podcasts that you've recorded, the episodes. And I figured that in these episodes, you ask your guests these quick fire round questions. And I thought it would be a really good idea if I flipped those questions back at you and see how you would deal in the circumstances that you present to your guests. So my first question, what is your favorite book? Oh, yes. What is your favorite book? And if you were stuck on a desert island...
One question at a time. Hold on.
Okay, fine. What is your favorite book? Let's start with that.
Favorite book. I don't know if I have an all-time favorite book, but my current favorite book is probably Simon Sinek, Start With Why. And for anyone that hasn't read that, it's about the psychology of, why do you do something? What is it about that's important to you? And if you look at the typical golden circle, so how, what, why, and this really helps with sort of public speaking and confidence building as well, is get to the why of your topic, understand that, and then you can talk about it confidently. And I think, if you think about the podcast, right, I claim to know nothing. And so I'm challenging other people to understand their notions and what they think about various things, wealth, dharma, etc. So yeah, that's my favorite book at the moment.
What was it again?
Simon Sinek, Start With Why.
Start With Why. Simon Sinek, Start With Why. Interesting. I'll have a look on my Audible for that. All right. Second question, Sumit. If you had to take only 3 things on a desert island, what would they be?
I thought about this one, right? And I think it would be fair to say that I would take a fully staffed private jet, because then I could fly wherever I wanted to from there. Like I wouldn't be stranded on the island. Is that all right?
Okay.
Is that a cop out?
Yeah. Yeah, it is a cop out.
No.
Okay, well, that's one thing. Two more things.
I imagine being, you know, the question around if you're stranded on a desert island, it takes three things. What I really like about that is how it can get people to think about survival. Because it's almost like, you know, what do I need to survive? People, and I asked this on the podcast, people, you know, say like, you know, water through a knife or something like that. And so it makes you as an individual think, what's important to my survival? And then you start assuming things like water, food, that kind of stuff. So I think, you know, don't make assumptions. So the second thing I would like is like a fully equipped kitchen with a chef, nutritionist, gym kind of thing. So that part of my life is sort of taken care of, right? Then I can and here I'll lead into the third thing. Then I can focus on the creativity side of things. Being stranded on an island means you've got that time to focus. So I would want a stationary kit, pens, pencils, so I can draw, write, and all the thoughts that I have by being stranded, I can then internalize. I will internalize and then externalize. I want to be able to record into a mic or record a video or do a podcast or write a journal. I don't know. I feel like, yeah, I hope, does that answer your questions?
Yeah, sure. So the first two things are just people with you, so you're not actually alone on the island. And
no, they're doing a job, right?
They're doing jobs for you, so you can concentrate on your higher level of creativeness.
Sure.
Brilliant.
Yeah, man, break the rules.
Brilliant. All right, Sumit. So, what have we done so far with the podcast? What have
is that it in the rapid fire round? Yeah.
That's all. You kind of disappointed me with the three things that you're going to take to the desert island. I mean,
let me do my breakfast smoothie.
Okay, well, I was hoping something like unlimited stock of Japanese cheesecake and bubble tea.
Oh man,
I know how much you love bubble tea, so
I, for the record, do not like bubble tea. But let's not. You know, you'll have to come on the podcast and justify your claim there. You know, but let me do my favorite breakfast smoothie because I think they're great. A banana, strawberries, blueberries, Brazil nuts, vegan protein, some Scottish oats, touch of cinnamon, and whatever flavor of alternative milk, cashew milk, oat milk, something like that.
And is this every morning?
That's my go-to. You know, obviously I have to substitute some bits, but that's my go-to breakfast smoothie.
All right, well, I'll have a try of that too. Everyone at home, feel free to try Sumit's go-to breakfast smoothie. All right, Sumit. So, back onto our topic of podcast, what have we done so far in terms of the episodes? I know you briefly spoke about the episodes that we've pre-recorded already with Dharma and womanhood, but could you enlighten us more on what we've done so far?
Sure. So right now you can go onto your podcast app and search for VM Podcast and you'll find two episodes. Episode 1 with Dr. Satyananda on exploring Dharma. And so we really get into the nitty-gritty of what Dharma is, how we can define it, what it is and isn't. And I learned a lot during that process. You know, Dharma is one of those things that you can forever be learning about. And so I'm very grateful to have that opportunity. Episode 2 was with Ravi Lakhani, VM fellow and senior mergers and acquisitions consultant. And we talk about wealth, you know, crypto, banking, gold, all those kind of things. Like, what does wealth mean in society? So great. Episode 3, which will be coming out in 2 days' time on the 8th of March, which is International Women's Day, is about womanhood. And that's been recorded with Drishti May. And so that's quite interesting, you know.
I am really excited for it.
Yeah,
because I had a little bit of sneak peek of it.
We get into details of, you know, what it means to be a woman and how perhaps that's not feminism. So interested to hear what people think, you know, and again on International Women's Day. So that's that. Then we've got Satyanji back again for the application of Dharma. As I was saying, we're going to talk about what happened, right, is with episode 1, there was great feedback about, we've explored Dharma, but people wanted to know how they could apply it to daily life. Like, what does that mean really in reality? And so I brought Sachinji back, and I thought, in life we have lots of elements. One of those that's quite important is relationships. You and I were talking the other day about isolation and lockdown and how that could be quite a lonely experience for people. And so relationships I thought was quite important. So I've got Sachinji back. We're talking about the application of Dharma to relationships. And then, oh man, there's a pipeline, right? Dr. Bansri Lakhani, we talk about sustainable contributions and the Earth Foundation, the 1% Club. So there's lots to look out for. I'm in the process of editing and recording a few more, and we'll bring them out. I look forward to hearing what people think. And I want to know what topics people want us to cover, right? You've got to let us know.
All right. Well, it seems like there's really good lineup already for the VM podcast episodes, which leads me to kind of think, Sumit, if you had the chance to invite, your dream guest onto one of the episodes, who would it be? Who would your dream guest be?
Ooh.
And you can't pick me, of course.
Sure. That's a great question. I was very fortunate to, in 2018, go to the World Hindu Congress in Chicago. And whilst we were there at the conference, we managed to go to what today is called the Fullerton Hall. And back in, I don't know the dates, I should know them, 125 years ago, Swami Vivekananda went to that building at such a young age, I can't remember how old he was, and gave a speech at the Parliament of World Religions to something like 6,000 people. I stood in the exact place where he stood in that hall. It was amazing. And it's argued that he set the benchmark. He introduced Dharma to the West at that time in that era, and it's so well renowned. Like, you can go back and listen to that now, the things he's talking about, what Dharma has done for humanity through its, I don't even know, 10,000 plus year history, maybe more. So someone like Swami Vivekananda on the VM podcast would be absolutely amazing. I feel like we would learn so much from him. And the principles of Dharma are timeless. And so a man so eloquent like that would be amazing. That would be absolutely amazing. And I'm going to squeeze a cheeky number 2 in. I often watch YouTube videos of famous speeches and again, eloquent speakers, right? It's one of my passions. And so I've been watching a lot of Jiddu Krishnamurti recently, which is what led me to the book club, right? To Vicharamanthan Book Club, Oxford Book Club. And so again, he's a fantastic speaker. The way he communicates is awesome. So Swami Vivekananda number 1 and Jiddu Krishnamurti number 2. And I'm sure there's a whole bunch of others I would also like. So Niti, if you can stretch the budget, let's make it happen.
Oh God, you're putting pressure on me, but we'll try my best. So that was such a lovely thought to kind of bring our launch to an end. Really sorry, I would have loved to continue chatting to you about the podcast for another hour, but we have to bring this to an end. All right, thank you all very much for tuning in, and I'm sure you are just as excited as I am for these upcoming episodes. I am extremely excited about the womanhood episode, and we would love to hear your thoughts. So do check out our published episodes on our podcast channels. Like Sumit said, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, as well as our social media handles. You can find the links below in the description box. And that leads me on to our next fireside. Our next fireside is as you can see on the poster, it's on Saturday, the 20th of March at 7 p.m. And the topic in discussion will be, will we all be eating lab-grown foods in 2050? So I am looking forward to joining this fireside and listening to the expert thoughts that are going to be churned out. And I hope you can join us too. Thank you very much, Sumit, for joining us, and namaste.